Hi, everyone. Welcome back. So we're starting the second round of this afternoon's choice phase. This room is doing the project showcase for this afternoon, which is about how tried and tested solutions can help transform towns or cities. If you don't want to be in this session, you need to click on the event map button at the top of the screen. See two buttons, agenda and event map. Click on the event map one. You can choose to go to the spotlight session, which is how to work together to deliver change. Or you can choose to go to the workshop, which again is with Kerry Tottingham, looking at designing your own change with systems thinking. It's a bit more of a starter session on systems work. I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. Well, I won't really. I'll give you 1 minute to do that if you want to move room. Say now in chat if you're struggling. Okay, and then David, if you want to come on the screen. Okay, great, there you are. Good. Right, I'll go and hand over to you. Lisa's saying it's difficult to choose. They all sound good. It's terrible when that happens. David, I'll hand over to you and enjoy your session.
Thanks very much, Susie. And hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is the showcase support session on tackling climate change and supporting nature. So really the fundamentals of why we're all here, or how we're going to be delivering all of the change that we want. So we know more and more people are living in towns and cities in the UK and globally. Cities seem to be variously described as a home for all of our technical solutions to all of our problems, or just a sink for social and environmental ills and everything in between. But we know the qualities and characteristics of cities are as diverse within and between them as their people are. What we can say is that urbanization is certainly not a retreat of humanity from nature. Everything we do, our lives, our urban systems are not disconnected from nature, but really intimately connected, from our food and our fuel to our waste and our water. And above all of that, we know that people want nature in their lives, and we will know the various ways that they can benefit from it. We can make all of this happen in a few different ways. This has come up repeatedly today about the active responsibility for stewardship for the benefit of nature itself. Equitably redistributing benefits for people, and then increasing what green space and nature means to people. So it's not something that just feels very distant and abstract from them, and they can start caring for it. But pockets of nature, small pockets around towns and cities, are not going to address that problem. The problems we have of a heating planet and biodiversity collapse, we need to look at this holistically within and beyond the urban boundaries, understanding pressures that cities exert on nature and the impact that changing and heating climate has on our towns and cities and their people. So what role can nature play in a just transition? How do vulnerable and marginalized in our society thrive, and where? How can we solve a growing housing crisis and balance that need for more housing with a sort of relentless drive for growth? And what does that growth mean? How can we redefine that to improve nature as well as human well-being? So all three of our speakers are delivering work that approaches nature in cities beyond, in cities and beyond, at a strategic scale. And in all these cases, it's not about stitching green patches into the gaps, but weaving nature through towns and cities for the resilience of people and nature. So the session is really about showcasing really inspiring work. So we'll have some time for questions, but we're going to be dedicating most of our time for our speakers. First up is Alice Ludlow, who's the Urban Tree Canopy Coordinator for Glasgow at Trees for Cities. Alice has over 11 years experience in education, which has already come up as a strong theme throughout today. And the work Alice does is focused on creating healthier, greener spaces, working with schools and other local partners. And Alice is going to showcase the amazing work that they're doing through the Clyde Climate Forest. So I'm going to hand over to you, Alice. I think you have slides, and I will leave it to you. Thanks.
Great, thank you. I'll just share my slides. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that.
Yes, got that, Alice. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alice Ludlow, and I am the Urban Tree Canopy Coordinator at Trees for Cities and the Clyde Climate Forest. So today I'm presenting to you a case study of the Clyde Climate Forest, which is based in the Glasgow City region. And I'll be taking you through what the Clyde Climate Forest is and how we engage with local communities. So first, a little bit of background information on the Clyde Climate Forest. So this is an initiative that will see trees planted both in urban and rural parts of the Glasgow City region over the next decade. So the project itself was born out of the Green Network blueprint and was to be delivered as part of the Glasgow City region Green Network strategic habitat network. The Clyde Climate Forest covers all of the 8 regional local authorities that make up the Glasgow City region. And our core team includes a number of different organisations from the Green Action Trust, Trees for Cities, the Conservation Volunteers, and the GCR Green Network. This is bringing skills together such as school engagement, volunteer engagement, forestry knowledge, project development, delivery experience, and communication expertise. And the Clyde Climate Forest is being delivered with the help of these following partners. So in addition to parts of the team, we've got also the Woodland Trust, Scottish Forestry, Glasgow City Region, Future Woodland Scotland, and the Tree Council. So woodlands, trees, forests are recognised as essential if we are to address the twin crises of climate change and biodiversity loss. So the Clyde Climate Forest builds on the growing enthusiasm for tree planting and has channeled that interest into worthwhile and well-considered tree planting projects that deliver a broad range of climate and ecological benefits to the Glasgow City region. We have split the project into 3 areas of focus. So our 3 Cs, which is canopy, connectivity, and carbon. So for canopy, which is the part that I am a part of, across the urban areas of the Glasgow City region, the average tree canopy cover is currently around about 17%. So by 2032, the Clyde Climate Forest aims to increase the average tree canopy cover from 17 to 20%, which is the lowest recommended level for UK towns and cities in the face of a changing climate. The next is connectivity. So this is connecting woodland networks that have been affected by habitat fragmentation. And this is also providing migratory routes as climate changes. So at the moment, the average is around about 119 hectares, and by 2033, increase to 142 hectares. And then the last one is carbon. So obviously, as the canopy cover increases, so too will the amount of trees that will take in carbon. So that will move from 17% to 20%. So how did we get to this? So any tree planting in the Glasgow City region contributes to the Clyde Climate Forest, but our initial focus is to target specific neighbourhoods to maximise the impacts of tree planting in areas vulnerable to climate impacts. So aerial surveys were conducted to map out the canopy cover of the Glasgow City region. So you can see there that we've got the averages for the 8 local authorities there. So I'm just going to use an example to see how that goes into a bit further detail. So I'm using North Lanarkshire as an example here. So the canopy percentage was calculated, and obviously the lower canopy cover is shown in a lighter green. So we then took the lighter green further, and we managed to identify 3 areas within North Lanarkshire that had the lowest canopy cover. So we've got Bells Hill, Central Wishaw, and North Motherwell. And then within that further, we looked at postcodes where they have have been impacted or will be impacted by heat island effect and flooding. So Bells Hill is an example. So you can see there we have a couple of vulnerable postcodes there. And if you look at Google View Map and things like that, you can see that there's a reason why the canopy cover is low. There is not much tree space at all there. There's grasses that have obviously green spaces that are mowed by the council. Trees are houses are very closely packed together. So there's very little for trees to actually be planted there. So we did this for all of the 8 local authorities, and once that was completed, we managed to identify 16 target neighbourhoods to help with us to focus on our tree planting projects. So how did we get this started? So we worked with the local councils to identify potential planting sites on their land. It has been endorsed by the council leaders of all 8 local authorities, and all of the 8 councils have committed to supporting delivery of the Clyde Climate Forest, signing a Concordat agreement to embed the Clyde Climate Forest targets into their own plans and policies, and is now connecting and enhancing the woodland network across local authority boundaries, benefiting people, wildlife and climate. So having that support from councillors and chief execs from the local authorities has been extremely important. So to date, we have engaged with around about 12 out of the 16 of the target neighbourhoods that were deemed vulnerable to climate impacts. So we have found that engaging with local primary and secondary schools has been extremely important. Educating younger generations allows them to be aware and part of a solution to reducing climate impact through tree planting. Young people take ownership in the trees they plant, and we found that due to this, vandalism is reduced when people take part in the delivery. We also engage with local primary and secondary schools in more depth rather than just tree planting. We also go in and do assemblies, workshops to show the importance of why having trees are important in their local area. As well, we have decided to have 2 separate days for planting. So we have one day that's dedicated to schools coming and doing tree planting, and then the one day for community groups and communities, locals to come and do tree planting. And what I've found is that when you have the kids coming one day and planting, they will come the next day with their parents or grandparents or any of their relatives to show them what trees they've planted, and they love showing their parents how to plant trees as well. So it's really nice to see that. We also do through consultation. So once the sites are identified, we make sure that the local residents are made aware. This can be through mailing leaflets, having posters around, social media, connecting with the local authorities' social media, community groups, and also through community councils if they're active in the area. We found that consultation and community engagement is extremely important because it creates its ownership of the trees and, like I said, reduces vandalism. Now, that doesn't mean to say that vandalism doesn't take place, but what we have found is that when the local residents are consulted, if any vandalism does take place, you find that a lot of the residents are very, for want of a better word, outraged by anything that happens, and we always get told if something does happen. So we make it make it important to come in and deal with that. So there's always room for improvement. Consultation could be made into a wider community engagement, and also for us, we're the use of our tree wardens, which I'm going to explain that in just a second. So the Clyde Climate Forest has started.
Alice,
Yep.
2 minutes if you can, please.
Perfect, yeah. So the Clyde Climate Forest has started a tree maintenance program across the city region to look after more than 10,000 urban trees that have been planted to date. And our new community volunteer coordinator coordinates and manages these tree wardens, and they help monitor and help maintain these trees, and they're also provided training to help support that. So here are some of the benefits from this. So obviously it improves canopy cover. It helps with reducing the effects of climate change, so flooding and heat island effect. I find that when I'm speaking to local residents about this, They all know about biodiversity, but actually what trees do for reducing the impact of flooding, and also a lot of them don't know about the heat island effect. So having that also makes it more relatable to them. It also improves mental health for people. So just even generally being out and planting, and even just doing tree ID walks and things like that makes people feel so much better. We've also been engaging with a lot of young people. That is extremely important. They're the future. They need to be a part of the solution. And this creation of tree wardens. Our relationship with our local authorities has just been getting stronger and stronger every year. And as well, we have had models of other climate forests that have come about. So for example, the fourth climate forest, which is Stirlingshire, Falkirk and Clackmannanshire, and Fife as well. And you can see that we have increasing our tree numbers. I don't have 24, 25 because that's being counted at the moment, but you can see that we are standards and WIPs, and these are done by local communities and schools. So thank you for listening. I've left my contact information there on the screen. So if anybody has any questions later on, please feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Alice. Thank you for that. It's really very powerful to see that sort of urban forestry approach, but a broader than a city scale, sort of like a real landscape scale, prioritizing and where the need is, and then bringing that right down to the benefits for people, starting with listening and before communicating that through those networks of schools. It's great. We are going to come to questions at the end of all three presentations. So now we're going to move on to Ian Russell from Enfield, London Borough of Enfield. Ian has led the watercourses team at Enfield for over 10 years, working on flood alleviation and sustainable drainage. The work focuses on nature-based solutions, mitigating the impact of urban pollution and reducing flood risk. I had the pleasure of a tour around a lot of the SUDs in Enfield on a very sunny day last year or the year before. Hopefully Ian can bring us a little bit of the essence of that tour digitally. Over to you, Ian.
Great, thanks David, and good afternoon everyone. I'm just going to try sharing my slides. Hopefully that's coming through okay. If you could just let me know if everyone can see that.
Yeah, we've got you.
Fantastic. Yeah, so as David said, my name's Ian Russell. I've been leading the Blue and Green team at Enfield for several years. And today I'd like to talk about some of the nature-based solutions that we're using to manage a wide range of different issues across the borough. I should start by saying that we often refer to them as SUDs, or sustainable drainage, sometimes natural flood management. Another term we quite favour is blue-green infrastructure, which is basically an interconnected network of natural and built spaces such as wetlands, woodlands, parks and rivers that can deliver a wide range of different benefits. So before I get onto that, though, I want to talk about some of the issues and the problems we have in Enfield and give you that context. So Enfield is very much an outer London borough, which means it's got a lot of densely populated urban areas, but it's also got a lot of green spaces, and it has a lot of lovely rivers, which are fantastic. But those rivers also represent flood risk, and this is one of the main drivers for a lot of the projects that we are doing in Enfield. When I started working here, that was my only priority, was to try and reduce flood risk. But what we've learned over the years is actually by taking a nature-focused approach, we can deliver multi-beneficial projects that can actually involve a lot more partners, get a lot more funding, and deliver a much wider range of outcomes. So what you can see there is, we've got the River Lee, which is the second biggest river in London on the eastern side of Enfield, but there's also three other rivers that flow from west to east across the borough, and most of the flood risk is concentrated in the southeast of the borough, which is also one of the most deprived areas, which is not a coincidence. I'm sure you'll understand. When we think about drainage, there's, the solution for, most of the last century has been to stick it in a pipe. Get rid of water as quickly as possible, because it wasn't seen as a precious resource, it was seen as a bit of a nuisance. Unfortunately, that has a lot of unintended consequences. It can actually increase the risk of flooding by sending it in, concentrating it in one location very quickly. It also increases the risk of droughts, because you're not allowing water to soak into the ground and contribute to the base flow in those rivers and recharge aquifers. But also, pipes themselves are very, very prone to blockages. They're very likely to fail, and they often fail just when you need them most, because quite often you get debris building up in rivers or on roads, and when you get that heavy rainfall, it washes that debris to the nearest gully, drain or culvert, and that's when the blockage occurs, and that's when you get worse flooding. So although we often think about climate risks being exacerbated by, more intense rainfall, and we also think about, more urbanization leading to more runoff and so on, just this simple kind of like blockages and lack of maintenance is often a significant contributing factor. But the other big issue we face is pollution in our rivers. There's some photos there that can show you what can happen in the very severe cases, hundreds of fish being killed due to pollution. And in the top right, you can see that kind of cloudy looking substance in the river. That is the delightfully named sewage fungus, which is a fungus that grows when sewage is getting in the river. And unfortunately, that is something we see quite a lot around London and in Enfield. It's not just in Enfield. So to combat this, one of the things we've been doing over the last 10 years is creating urban wetlands. And our real flagship scheme that was actually built about 10 years ago is at Firs Farm. This is what it looked like before. It was a quite uninspiring space, sometimes called a green desert. It was used for sports facilities, like a few football pitches, but very, very poorly used by the vast majority of the public who live next to it. It was on a floodplain. There is actually a river flowing underneath there in a pipe, but you wouldn't have known it. So what we did was we brought the river back to life, dug some holes, planted lots of trees, planted lots of wetland plants, put in some seating, pathways, boardwalks, working with the local community who were very, very supportive of this from the outset. We were able to create an outdoor classroom, which is used by lots of local schools. I think there's about 10 schools within a sort of 10-minute walk of this site. What's interesting about it, though, I guess the scheme itself cost about £1.3 million in total, but a big proportion of that was we still had to put in some hard engineering. We had to divert pipes and we had to build some flood defences. The actual wetlands themselves only cost about £250,000. And that's because we were quite fortunate at this location that we didn't have any contaminated land or buried services or significant archaeological issues. So we basically were just moving soil around within the site. We did move tens of thousands of tons of soil, but that itself is relatively cheap. It was the other infrastructure that we put in that added to the cost. I think we spent almost £500,000 putting in new footpaths and cycleways and boardwalks and things. But that infrastructure is the kind of people-facing infrastructure that makes the site accessible, makes it usable, allows people to enjoy it. And this scheme really has gone from strength to strength. So this is why I wanted to talk about it, even though it's a few years old, is because just in the last year, well, I think soon after the scheme was finished, the local friends group, which didn't exist before, but it didn't have a friends group before the scheme. The friends group came about because, there was kind of something to be friends with, as it were. They had a wetlands festival. Thousands of people attended it. They've now got an incredibly strong and thriving group with well over 100 members who are meet regularly to do all sorts of volunteering activities. But what was exciting last year was they actually managed to raise funding and open the Firs Farm Community Hub, which has been a long-standing ambition. So this is a building which is a cafe, but it's also got space that the local community can use for things like yoga, first aid training, all sorts of different activities. It's got a changing places toilet, which is really important because it means that people who are, in wheelchairs or with more severe disabilities can actually now come to this space and, experience the nature and spend time in nature when previously they wouldn't necessarily have been able to do that. So it's just been a really exciting project to be part of. And we've done about a dozen other wetlands like this around Enfield. None of them have been quite successful as this one, but they've all got potential and they're all good for lots of different reasons. On the funding side, before I move on to the next project, I just wanted to mention that of that £1.3 million, I think about half of it was from the Environment Agency, and that was all related to the flood benefits that the scheme delivers. It actually protects close to 200 local properties from flooding, as well as all the biodiversity and other benefits. The rest of the money came, some of it from the Greater London Authority, and also from Enfield Council, and a bit of it from Transport for London for the cycleways, and a little bit of money from Thames Water as well. So it's been a real cocktail of funding from different sources, and that's often what makes these projects work, is kind of getting the money from all these different partners and kind of trying to bring it all together. So Albany Park is a project that was completed more recently. It's a river rather than a wetland. Unfortunately, that photo in the top right is what a lot of rivers look like in Enfield, hidden away at the back of properties, lots of falling to bits concrete, rubbish, etc., forgotten about, unloved. In this case, the river was flowing alongside the northern boundary of Albany Park, as you can see in the photo in the bottom right there. And that photo was taken during the construction. So what we're doing there was we're carving out a new channel in the park, bringing the river right into the park. And that's what it looks like now. So hopefully you'll agree it's a massive improvement on the image you saw on the previous slide. And
Ian,
again,
just a 2-minute
okay,
warning.
okay,
Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, David. So again, it's been a really successful project. It's about placemaking. It's about creating places that people can spend time, enjoy, grow to love, form relationships with. Aside from some of those big projects that we've done where we've got opportunities to do so, we're also very keen on bringing small pockets of greenery into our kind of streetscapes and schools and so on. So this is a typical rain garden. We've done about 300 of these around the borough now. This is another location. This is a before photo, in case you're wondering, and this is what it looks like now. So again, it's just an example of how you can really improve the public realm, and this is all linked to work that we're doing to try and encourage people to use active transport, so walking and cycling instead of driving. So often we deliver these measures hand in hand with our colleagues in traffic, and who are doing cycle schemes and other kind of urban regeneration schemes. Before I run out of time, I've got a couple of slides on the health links. I think I mentioned at the start that one of the main drivers for all our projects is reducing flood risk and managing water better, but it's also about people. Enfield Council is the main driver for the councillors and the people who work at the council is actually to make Enfield a better, healthier place to live. I won't dwell on these slides too much because I'm running out of time, but the main point of this slide really is to show the incredible disparity in terms of climate risk between the east and the west of the borough. And the east of the borough is also, the most deprived area. So it's where the people who are most at risk from climate change are the people who live in the poor areas and generally don't have, the finances to be able to deal with it as well. This slide is demonstrating how these types of blue-green infrastructure measures can deliver a whole range of different health impacts and health outcomes. So that's mental and physical health, reduced mortality, healthier body weights. There's just, you could talk for a very long time about all the different positive outcomes about this, but I think I'll probably run out of time. So I'll stop there, and I think we can share the slides afterwards.
Yes, we will share the slides. Thanks very much, Ian. That's very good of you to rush through at the end. We can follow up on some of that in the questions if it's of interest to people, and that's obviously something that we see again and again, those links between health deprivation and lack of green infrastructure. And yeah, those before and after pictures are sort of shockingly good, and I think probably the only thing that could improve on being there, because you can really see the transformation. So last up we have Jerry Griffiths, Natural Infrastructure Officer at Plymouth City Council. Jerry leads the work at Derriford Community Park, working on a 150-hectare site in North Plymouth, which I also had the honour of visiting a couple of years ago. Didn't manage to see any beavers, but had a really nice time. And yeah, I'm sort of particularly excited to hear something that was in the early stages at that point, how the development of exciting work around young people, health and well-being. So over to you, Jerry. Thanks.
Thanks, David. You get to go on all the good site visits, don't you?
I know.
Let me share my screen. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah, got it.
Good. Okay, well, thanks very much to everyone for coming today. I've seen some really inspirational presentations so far. I work for Plymouth City Council, and I'm the Programme Manager for Derriford Community Park, which is a community park in the north of the city, which includes a farm, of all things, not the sort of thing you'd expect in the middle of a city. So Derriford Community Park is the newest and largest park in Plymouth, and I'm lucky because day in, day out, as a site, we're delivering tangible benefits for the environment and for people. The site itself is about 150 hectares. We started the on-the-ground creation of this space from effectively a derelict farm in about 2016, 2017. So what is the community park? Well, I describe it as a hub for green skills, for outdoor learning, and for ecotherapy, which is our new health and wellbeing objectives. Our reach is citywide, but we also work beyond the city boundaries, and we're particularly focused on children and young people, although we don't exclude the older generations, and we do lots with volunteers and various other adult learners as well. But we have had a particular focus on children and young people. And over the last 12 months, we've had about 4,000 children and young people come through our doors, run some kind of activity, and go home. We hope a little bit muddier, a little bit happier, a little bit less anxious, a little bit more grounded, possibly a bit fitter, certainly full of marshmallows. But what we really hope is that they go home a little more connected to nature and with a real reason to care for our planet. Okay, so today I've got a short video, and then I'm going to go through the what, how, where of Derriford Community Park, and then I've got two very quick highlight projects to demonstrate some of the work we're doing. It's going to be a little bit like a story. So, the story is a big idea, a farm, a council, some volunteers, some equal measures of perspiration and inspiration, and chuck a couple of beavers in there, and yeah, you can kind of get the picture of what I'm trying to tell you. I must say, I've certainly not found an instruction manual for how to create a community park. We've done a lot of learning by doing, which is probably our favourite phrase. Some mistakes along the way as well. And we're very reliant on some fantastic partnerships with other organisations that we can lean on for the expertise in areas we don't have. So it really is a joint collaborative approach from a multitude of organisations, teams, people, communities to get to where we are now. I really hope I can share some of this learning with you today. So here's the video, and I'll be back in 2 minutes. Okay, so I hope that gives you a bit of a flavour of what we do at Derriford Community Park. That says more than I can put into any slides. As you can see, hopefully from the video, we've come a long way, but we're still very much a work in progress. It was only until last year that we actually got some flushing loos. Before that, it was compost loos for all our visitors. Rewind back to 2016, this is what the site looked like when my predecessor took on the keys, and it was previously owned by a 70-year-old farmer who had basically run it into the ground. He ran a principle of let's thing because it will come in handy one day, as a lot of farmers do, and every single building is chock full of junk and asbestos, and that was just our starting point. So how did Derriford Community Park come about? Well, I see it like a bit like a recipe. First of all, you need the location, then you need vision, you need funding, and then you need to deliver. The location-wise, we are in the north of Plymouth. It's in the city. It's very residential in the surroundings, and if you could say, it's the perfect place for a community park. Housing estates all the way around on every side, and we're one of the last sort of oasis of green in that vicinity. Then you need a vision. So some people back in 2009, very visionary, noticed or did some work to show that there was a disparity in green space between the north of the city and the south of the city, there being not enough in the north and a bit in the south. So in order to balance out that equity, we produced a Derriford Community Park master plan, which was to create the community park idea. And then to get this enshrined and actually happen, we managed to put this into the joint local plan as a key strategic green space for the city. Having it in the joint local plan means it's in spatial planning, which we had council backing for, and it really meant that, yes, this thing's going to happen. But then you need to fund it. Now, I'm very keen to say that we don't receive any core council funding from Plymouth City Council. We are entirely reliant on external funding. And so far, we've secured about £5.5 million to put into this community park, but it's not enough. We need to do more. So far, that funding, because a lot of people are very interested in that, consists of Section 106. It consists of some external funding from the EU with our Green Minds project, from the Youth Investment Fund, which is just coming to end now, and also from the Transforming Cities Fund. So we've done fairly well to lever in funding from external places, and this has enabled us to deliver 150 hectares of community park, which is what you're looking at now. It's made up of 3 local nature reserves, and it has Pool Farm in the middle. Now we've
Jerry,
built
just 2 minutes.
a network of cycle and footpaths, and that has enabled us to create public access in areas that were previously privately owned. So you can see the cycle path running down the middle. That is through what was once a private valley. So now we're opened all that up to the public. We've done about 2 kilometers of hedgerow, 2,500 trees, 300 fruit trees, natural flood management, and reintroduced beavers. So we're getting on with doing quite a lot of stuff now. Key partnerships, and this is absolutely crucial, have been, a variety of partners. They've all been fantastic in different ways, and we're very grateful for all their support, as well as we are with our volunteers. Now, I was thinking, what's the key learning here? And as I said, there isn't a guidebook for how to do this, but I think what we need to, if you're in a similar situation, what you need to look for is for and realize opportunities. You need to take risks. I think other council departments would perhaps not take the risks we have, but I think low risk, high risk, high reward. We listen to and involve communities throughout the process. We share and are very open with others. We're very efficient and agile, and we work to our strengths. But crucially, we keep within the strategic planning and corporate framework that the Joint Local Plan and Plymouth City Council provide us. So the first example of the projects we run is ecotherapy. Now, we've all talked about nature and how that can help health and well-being. Our ecotherapy program is young people who have mild to moderate anxiety, depression, low mood. They are likely to go into CAMS, which is the Children and Adolescent Mental Health System, and we work with the NHS through a partnership with Live Well Southwest, and we run a program of 6 sessions for youngsters to come in and do ecotherapy with a trained mental health practitioner. So this is somebody from the NHS, they're a mental health nurse, and they work with us and my team to deliver these activities that happen across the site, and we've seen some fantastic results. I can't go through all of them, but we've seen reductions in anxiety and also improvements in social and emotional learning. So the youngsters are reporting that they can communicate better, they can build relationships, they can make friends, they can get out of their bedrooms, they can jump in puddles. They're doing a lot of things better after 6 sessions. And then we signpost them to other activities that are going on around the city, such as the National Marine Park, and other sort of youth club activities that we run through the council. Now, my last slide is the Plymouth Beaver project. Someone said to me very early on in this project, why is the council doing this? Is this just a vanity project? My answer, and still my answer now, is no, this is a science-based project. We were the first urban beaver rewilding project. It was all based around what monitoring and evidence could we gather for beavers being a good thing in an urban context. And the highlights of that is a Exeter University 5-year hydrological monitoring study that showed that our beavers and some of the woody debris dams that we built up in the same river have reduced the peak flow of the river in flood conditions by 23%. So that really cements, we've got the evidence to show why beavers are so good in an urban context at reducing flooding. We also run our schools program with beaver tours, and beavers are a key theme of our ecotherapy project. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry, and thanks all three of you for sticking to your time so diligently. Yeah, there's a lot of things, Jerry, that you brought through there that featured in both Alice and Ian's presentations as well, about a range of partnerships, a huge cocktail of funding, and that question of equity, which you are all doing a brilliant job of just hammering home. And I think also really clearly, like, that assessment of the inequity being written into that joint local plan and the spatial planning to sort of operationalize it. We have 3 minutes for questions. If Alice and Ian, you would like to come back on camera, there's a whole bag of very, very good questions coming in. I'm just going to ask one to all of you, which is specifically about Furze Farm, but I'm going to try and sort of expand out. So if you can all give me 60 seconds on this, that would be great. So the question is about Furze Farm pre-intervention. So was that an open public space, and did you get any pushback from local sports clubs, and how you managed that? So that for you, Ian, and then Jerry and Alice, I guess, whether you've come into any questions around different wishes for land use and how you've addressed that in 60 seconds. Thanks.
So very quickly, we were very lucky with Furze Farm because it was a public open space. It was 20 hectares in total. It had 12 football pitches and a rugby pitch and space for cricket and some other sports. But incredibly, it just had all this space around the edges that was being used for basically nothing. And I just remember going there when we were first planning the project. In summer holidays, there were like 2 people sunbathing. That was it. In the winter, only dog walkers with wellies would be the people using it, basically. And it was incredible that we managed to fit in all this nature and all this space without... There was no negative pushback. We have done other schemes in other parks, or are doing schemes or planning them, which have had a lot more negative pushback because of people already have a relationship with that space. They don't like to see, some people just don't want to see any change because they've seen it, they've grown up with it, they've lived with it, you know. But it does sometimes really polarize people, you know. Neighbours, we don't want to create a situation where neighbours are fighting neighbours, but people can fall out a bit over it. You know, some people really embrace the change, some people don't want to see it. So we have to explain the reasons why we're doing it and try and bring people on board with us. And we're always kind of wary not to kind of force things on people. You know, try and, if we can do co-design, we do that. It's not always possible, but we put a lot of effort into workshops and engagement at early stages. It's really important.
Great, thanks, Ian. Alice?
Yeah, I agree with what Ian's saying. Is consultation and getting feedback from locals is so important, you know, to get them, and having that feedback. You know, there might be places where kids are playing football, or it is known for the slide, you know, using in the winter as a sledging place and things like that for the past 30 years, and we don't know those things. So it's good to get the feedback from those people, and when we do, then we can, you know, slightly change the design, even if it's just moving it a couple of meters one side to the other. They appreciate that, and that helps a lot.
Perfect, thank you. And Jerry, maybe a slightly different question for you given the nature of the site, but yeah, anything sort of local
I think I've got quite a relevant example actually,
okay,
because you know, you're introducing beavers into a city centre effectively, and you know, we wanted to make sure, as Ian said, you take the community with you. So it's very important to have the right upfront engagement and consultation. And you know, we didn't know what to expect when we put out questionnaires and feelers and drop-in sessions about, you know, what do you think about introducing beavers into this part of the city? But amazingly, it was overwhelmingly positive. But the consultation was really helpful in pointing out some areas of concern, which were actually not about why are you releasing beavers, we don't want them. It was, how do you make sure the beavers are safe? You know, how do you protect them from antisocial behaviour? How do you protect them from dogs and various other things that might happen in an urban context? You know, are they going to have to swim around shopping trolleys? And, you know, from that, we were able to use that evidence, and we built the fences stronger to keep people out and to keep beavers in. We made sure the dogs weren't going to be roaming anywhere near the beaver enclosure. We made the beaver enclosure huge. It's like 7 hectares. And we were able to respond to those concerns. And hopefully that's, that's meant that the community kind of bought into the whole project.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I'm just going to encourage everyone to get in touch with the three of you if they've got more questions. Sorry to just put you out there like that. But then also, you know, this is what Next Towns and Cities is going to be for, is like more of this sharing and being able to like ask questions and actually have the time to answer those questions in the future. But yeah, just once again, I would like to give a huge thank you to all three of you. I'm not sure what's happening now in terms of our location. Susie's here.
Yeah,
Hi,
I'm here.
Susie.
I'm not sure either. I am sure. So one of the other rooms is finished. The other is tailing off at the moment. We will go back into the main area and then we'll go back into stage view, but there may be a tiny bit of delay as we do that. I think we're currently being joined by everyone who has been in different rooms. Give it a minute or two so people can get back. This is the weirdest bit when you're just talking to the open space. Okay. Right, I'm going to start us off because we do not have much time left. So I believe we're all back in the room. Let me see. Yeah. Okay, good. Right. Some observations for you from what we have just been up to. Obviously, I wasn't in all three rooms simultaneously because that would be impossible. However, I have had some feedback from members of the team who are out there with you, and I'm going to try and do a little quick bit of synthesis of what we think has been going on this afternoon. So first of all, very honest, open environments. There seems to have been a very clear understanding of the gulf there is, particularly around access to green spaces, and that there's a huge amount of work to do, but massive commitment, recognition of the privilege for those of us that do have access, and a desire to challenge inequalities and shift the dial. I think that the co-word has been really important all the way through today and has kind of been validated as an important word through the afternoon. I've heard connectivity, I've heard a lot of collaboration, unsurprisingly. Co-ownership came through massively, I think, in all spaces. So that's co-design in order to create co-ownership, and then this co-benefits piece, which we're just hearing over and over again. One more to add to that, convergence. There seems to be recognition that there are places, and I've said it before, I will say it again, where multiple things simultaneously converge, and those are the sweet spots. I think other stuff that people have been hearing is that there's a need to balance and triage the whole time. There are conflicting priorities. It's not necessarily easy to do that. And that, again, developing capacity and competence is very, very important. That's everywhere though. That's capacity and competence for communities. That's within local authorities. There was some chat in the room I was in about how maintenance teams work, as an example. And it really, really helps, unsurprisingly, when local authority governance strategy and then statutory levers are used to open the doors and enable change. One last thing, the power of the picture is very significant here. Good photo, literally good photos and good videos are a game changer. So the more we can document the little pockets of excellence and show them to people, the more possible a different future becomes. We are going to do a little activity. Mona has just put into the chat. We want to know what the one action or your next action, what's the action you are going to take, the one action you are going to take in response to what you've heard today. This is us pivoting to what do we do? Now we've got to go out and do it. What's the next big thing we're going to do? Could be tiny. Click on the link, there's a Slido, and have a go at filling that out. Once we've done that, we are going to go to, in fact, you can do that, I think, through the next couple of keynotes, there's no rush. We are going to go to a, thank you, Alison, listen's a good one. We are going to go to a keynote, the closing keynote from Mette Coburn, who is Deputy Mayor of London for Environment and Energy. It's been pre-recorded. And then from that, after that, I'll be joined by Tony Juniper, who's the Chair of Natural England, who will close us out with his thoughts. Right, let's bring Mette up on screen.